African Echo, where we are engaging the voices and shaping our communities and our nation. In the recent weeks, an important debate has emerged around the religious freedom, the accountability, and the role of the state in matters of faith. And the commission, widely known as the CRL Commission, has been engaging with the religious leaders through the Section 22 process, amongst other things. However, some church organizations have raised concerns about the belief, and that's how this could lead to the regulation or licensing of churches. Today, we're creating the space for the CRL Commission to respond and also to just help and unpack this important conversation. Joining me today is the chairperson of the CRL. I am so immensely blessed to talk to the CRL Commissioner, Commissioner Thoko Mkhwanazi-Xaluva. Ndonga, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks a lot, Portia, for having us today.
It's absolute pleasure to have you. Commissioner, let's begin by helping our viewers and listeners to understand the role of the CRL Commission, the purpose of Section 22 process. If you could just explain the role, exactly why it was initiated.
Well, the Section 22 committees were initiated. There's one for Christians, African traditional religion, etc., etc.
Yes.
So the aim is for each religion. The Section 22 is a vehicle to consult, mainly.
Right.
Go and consult your particular religion people to go there and say, how do we end up with a self-regulatory council?
Okay.
And how do we end up with the code of conduct? So all that the Section 22, let me zoom in on Christians today.
Yes.
All that this particular Section 22 is supposed to do is to go out there and consult with their people to say, as Christians, how are we going to self-regulate outside the state? But also, how are we going to have a code of conduct that we can all agree to? That's all that they're supposed to do. And then come back and say, this is the kind of thing that everyone agrees to. And then the normal processes will then take place. So it's just to consult, go to all provinces to consult, only that.
It's been hectic, it's been havoc because the Section 22 committee has generated a very significant debate within the religious community. The mandate and what's the outcomes, what outcomes rather is the commission hoping to achieve through this process?
What we're hoping to achieve is that each faith will come up with, in our faith, this is how we want to self-regulate.
Right.
And this is the kind of code of conduct that is expected, that is going to be used to make sure that we all abide by it. And that's all that we expect.
That's all that you expect. There have been a lot of conversations, Commissioner, some in different spaces. And the major concerns that are coming from church leaders is the fear that government may end up regulating religion and or also talk about licensing the pastors. From the commissioner's perspective, how do you respond to such concerns? Because it sounds like you want to give them, if you don't take this license, then you're fired. It sounds like it's something of around those lines. What exactly you can give us response to this?
Let me give you an example, for instance. If you're going to be a doctor, you need to register with the Health Professionals Council, social workers, everyone belongs to a council. Because you don't want people out there who say, I'm a pastor, I'm a reverend, I'm an archbishop, etc., who are not registered anyway, number one,
Right.
who are not vetted anyway. This is the only profession in the whole country where you can just start up and you don't have to tell anybody in your profession that I'm starting up Mkhwanazi-Xaluva. I've got a church there. And this country has a law called the Children's Act, which says anyone who's going to work with children must be vetted. Okay. This is the only profession where you can have unfettered access to children and you're not vetted for the nation to know that we are fit to work with children. So there's no going around the fact that people must be licensed. We can say, oh, let's play nice and deceive them so that by the time they wake up, everyone in this country is licensed. Teachers, lawyers, everyone. Because of the issue of ethics. They say there are enough laws in this country. There are enough laws for social workers, for doctors, for lawyers, for everybody. But there are no laws that deal with ethics. All we're saying is that you need your own counsel, you need your own PS who will make sure that your ethics are correct. Unethical conduct is what these people who are fighting for. They say we can abide by the laws in terms of the criminal justice system, but don't talk to us about ethical conduct. We are not willing to talk to you about us being ethical. That violates our freedom of religion. That sounds ridiculous to some of us. If we are going to be unethical and you fight and march and scream and insult, crop videos, do everything because you're saying I have a right to unethical behavior, then as a nation we have a problem. If the people who are supposed to be looking after our morals, who are supposed to hold the moral compass of the nation, are saying those ethical standards are good enough for everyone, including traditional healers, by the way. But they're not good enough for us. We're not going to abide by ethical standards, even if those are being determined by our own peers. We are willing to abide by the laws in terms of the criminal justice system, but ethics we won't abide to. And ethics are at the core, because ethics are about things that are not illegal, but are unethical.
The concern
I always give.
Yes,
it
you
could
can
be
continue.
legal. Yes, it can be legal, but unethical. If you're making someone eat grass, you're not pointing a gun to their head. You just tell them, God said, if you eat that grass out there, you'll find a job. That's not illegal. You can't go to the police station and say, my sister is eating grass at Thoko Mkhwanazi-Xaluva church there in Mlas. It doesn't work that way. But council would be able to call the relevant religious leader and say, Pastor, we hear you feeding people grass there in your church. That is unethical. So what they're saying is that we'll continue doing all the other things that are legal, but unethical. That's where the fight is. That's where the march is about. And people must know that joining a march because other people insist on unethical behavior. That's the only fight we have. They can tell them it's about state regulation. How can your own peers state regulate? Lawyers have the Legal Practice Council. Are those lawyers being regulated by the state or by fellow lawyers. And I can even give you an example of the Judge President. He did not break any laws. He just sent emojis. And his peers sat with him for weeks saying, let's talk about this ethical behavior. Is it ethical? Is it unethical? What is this thing? We have not broken any law. But what they are saying is that once you say there's something called unethical behavior, there's a code of conduct that forces you to behave in a particular way designed by your peers who are officially set up to be your peers. And the Section 22 is not that. The Section 22's only role is to go and consult. So they start panicking at the altar of consultation because they know this train is not going to be a nice train for us. We are unethical. So they've already considered that we're unethical, please leave us alone. We're willing to abide by the laws, but don't talk to us about ethics. And I have a problem with that.
May I ask something, Commissioner, because this came up when I was speaking to one organization as well. The one that's really even myself, I was asking myself, I will ask this to Commissioner. The religion or being a pastor, it's not a career, is it? It's a calling. So how are you going to determine that? Because it's not actually, not everyone is going to say, I went to university and therefore this is my career. But it's a calling when someone has been called by the higher purpose, you know. So how are we going to make a determination from that?
I'll give an example. Being a traditional healer is a calling. 100% calling, we all know that. You're called by your ancestors.
Right.
There's the Traditional Health Practitioners Act. There's the Traditional Health Practitioners Council. The act was passed way back in 2007. They also have freedom of religion.
Right.
But they concede even today that there's unethical behavior in their sector. And they say they want the council to be there because there are people who are misbehaving. So the issue of a calling, some doctors are called, some nurses are called, people are called. And that's why I'm giving you a relevant example of traditional healers. People would say in isiZulu, I nginobizo. My ancestors have called me.
Nomfundisi will say ngibiziwe uNkulunkulu uthulume nami wathi.
Yebo.
Yes.
Yebo, nesangoma sibiziwe nenyanga ibiziwe. But what I'm saying is, why didn't they march? Why didn't they insult? Why didn't they crop videos at the time? Why did they say, we really need this? We're talking to them even today. They say, yes, we need this. Because there are always people who misbehave, even if they are not breaking the law. But people misbehave, so we do need a council. So the issue of being called does not exempt you from being unethical. You can be called and be unethical. People who feed people things, people who tell young women that God said, I must sleep with you, are unethical. They're not doing anything illegal. You're not going to go to the police station and say, hey, that pastor is telling my sister that God said she must sleep with him. Open a case here. It's not illegal. So what these people, the church defenders, are saying is that we will do everything so long as it's not illegal. If it's unethical, go try it next door, not here. We want to continue with our unethical behavior. No one has a constitutional right to be unethical, sis. Ageko, not even one. No one has a right to say, it's my freedom of religion to be unethical. It's my freedom of religion to mislead people into thinking that churches are about to be shut down. That's even un-Christ-like. So saying, no, it's a calling, it doesn't touch us, well, everyone is called sometimes. So when people are called to be Zangoma, are they less than pastors and reverends, etc.? They are not. The Constitution says we're all equal. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. What they're disputing is that they're equal.
Right.
They think they're more equal than other people. So let it happen everywhere else, except here. The excuse of being called should have even been higher with Izangoma, traditional healers, because to them, there's no university you go to. So we're not talking about people who go to university. You just go to Gobela who trains you. It's not about qualifications. It's about ethics.
Ethics.
I can say this till morning, sis.
It's
They
ethics.
are running away from ethical behavior. They want to fight. They even go to parliament and say, we have every right to be unethical. That's the interpretation of what they're saying. The Constitution protects us. It says abide by the laws, but don't abide by ethics. We're all about ethics. The fight is about ethics.
Let's look into this one. Thank you for this explanation, Commissioner. Now, let's look into this. Faith organizations have said Section 22 committee does not represent a broader Christian community. And I believe that is the crux of this matter after speaking to different organizations, including the CRL. How were the members selected, Commissioner, and the inclusivity of the consultation? Because the charismatic churches or the charismatic sector of Christian religion, they're saying we are not well represented and we don't feel represented. It's a question around that. Kindly assist us in clarifying that.
Okay, sis, let me start with charismatic churches. The first people who consulted was the International Federation of Charismatic Churches, the IFCC. We met with them first before we even met with the South African Council of Churches. So the people who are going to marginalize are not the first people you meet with and consult with. Those are the people you don't meet with and you don't consult with. So their point of departure is totally wrong. The SACC also has charismatic churches as members. So you can't then say, no, charismatic churches are marginalized. That's point number one. Your other question was, how did you identify people who are going to be members of the Section 22? As I said, IFCC was number one, which we have been working with while even Pastor Ray McCall was alive. We've been working with them for many years.
Right.
But also we then said, how do we get a mass-based Section 22? One thing that is a problem in this country, there's no registration of churches.
Right.
No one can tell you how many churches are in this country. No one can tell you how many umbrella organizations. So we said we'll go with the obvious big churches, mega churches, like your ZCC. You know already you've got 11 million people there. You go to Nazareth Baptist Church, you know you already have 6-7 million people there. You go to the SACC, you've got 15-16 million people there. These people are going to go out and consult, as I said, sis.
Right.
You could have your meetings, all of them at the FNB Stadium. Or you could say, let's go for a mass-based approach and say these millions already agree that this is not harmful to them. We even have moral regeneration movement,
Right.
Father Mkhacho, because this is about morals and ethics. Because as a nation, we have a structure created years back called the Moral Regeneration Movement. And I think in this religious sector especially, the issue of morals should be at the front of everyone. If you say you are a religious leader, I'm a pastor, or I'm Archbishop Thoko Mkhwanazi-Xaluva, my morals should be higher than the morals of Arab average people. My ethics should be above average. So we then went for the broad churches,
Right.
big churches that no one can say they are lying. We all know ZCC is massive. Ushembe can fill up the whole of Durban and block the whole of Durban and Pietermaritzburg. We know that very well. It's indisputable. So no one is excluded in terms of consultations. We have said the committee, the section ad hoc section committee for Christians has said they are launching in April in Durban.
Okay.
That will be the first consultation they're going to have. So everyone is invited. So no one is excluded, no one is left outside. Go and consult with them there. And they'll hear you, and the thing will be recorded, and they'll move from province to area to area to area. So there's no exclusion of anyone. This is not, I always say, this is not the council.
Right.
This is a space where you are going to be consulted. I know people are not used to being consulted. This is democracy on steroids that we're trying now. Because people normally meet with legislation when Parliament says, oh, there's this legislation we've discussed in Parliament. Come to this hall and listen to us tell you what we've decided on. We are saying we're not doing it that way. We're going to the extreme lengths of consulting people. So instead of marching, wait for the Section 22 to give you dates and venues and go and tell them what your worst fears are.
Right.
I've always said people are afraid of something. And there are others like the church defenders who then capitalize on fear, fake news, rumor mongering. Who then say to them, hey, your church is going to be closed. Someone told me in 2030, there'll be no church. You have been appointed by the ANC to lead the Christians in South Africa. I was like, hey, I haven't even, let alone being called, I wouldn't even know. I don't even know the Bible back to front. Now I'm going to run the whole country. So you see, fake news travel faster, especially if people are using social media. They make people panic. They make people afraid. They are not telling them the truth that we've got skeletons. So we need to protect those. Why use other people much and tell them, I want my rights to be unethical?
Right.
And see how many people join you in your march. How many people continue insulting some of us? It's a very simple thing, sis. Unethical behavior is not allowed in South Africa, whether we are a doctor, a social worker, a traditional healer. No one is allowed to hold on to unethical behavior.
So are we saying,
except the people?
are we saying, Commissioner, that the framework that will help and strengthen the leadership within the religious institutions in ensuring ukuthi because ngicabanga ukuthi amabandla they want the autonomicity on the independence of their churches. So what could be done? What is the framework? So I hear the consultations are sounding brilliant because I think Tina as KZN we are very much used to izimbizo where Premier will call ward to ward, sometimes zone to zone. He will sit down with people and consult with them. We are familiar with such. Now, what framework then are you going to, do you believe will be able to strengthen this ethical leadership is so muchly needed?
You see, take for instance the SACC. They have your mainline churches.
Yeah.
Personally, I go to the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church has its own systems. They train people, they deploy them, they discipline them, they do whatever, internally.
So everything has been put in place.
Yes.
Right.
That's not going to disturb that. But there must be a higher authority.
Okay.
Because what happens if there are issues that fall within the cracks? I don't want to go back to the issues about what we've seen all over the world with the Catholic Church and all the things that are coming out of that young boys suffered how much, and the church did not use its systems. What we're saying is that if there are people who fall between the cracks, even if you have your own system, they should have a door to go and knock.
Okay.
So that they can be sure that these are religious people and not Thoko Mkhwanazi-Xaluva.
Right.
Religious people. So there'll be an opportunity for the religious sector to elect their own people who are going to be part of the council.
Okay.
Well, they won't elect me, so I'm not sure how this people think is going to work because I won't be standing anyway. So they think there's going to be some council set up by the state. I think the state has a lot to do. They don't have time for that. Why didn't they set up the same thing for traditional healers, for doctors, for nurses, for everybody else? And my only question is, why is this profession? Because it is a profession, whether you are called or not. You are called and then something needs to happen. Right. If I sleep tonight and I feel a calling, then I'm going to go home, Mlazi, and put up my tent. It shouldn't work like that. Right. There must be a process between calling and the implementation of the calling. Okay. And the monitoring of that calling. Because the devil never stops, even when you think you've crossed the Rubicon. You might find that the devil finds you and you end up doing wrong things here in church. We've seen what happened with Omotoso. Omotoso would say it was a calling. I'm called, so don't disturb me. What he was doing was illegal and unethical. Unethical in that right there in Durban, in the most expensive places of Durban, Gomhlanga, he was busy deceiving young women every night. Last night, God said, here's my list for today, you must sleep with me.
Right.
No one was screaming because they truly believed God was speaking through him. If there was a council, when we first heard that there's the pastor there doing unusual things, we would have gone to the council to say, hey, Bafundis, there's a pastor there, Mhlanga, who's got 60 girls in his house. We understand he's doing this and this and that and telling them this and this and that. They would have called him just once and those girls would have been saved. Because there was no council, everything else continued. And these people are brave enough to say, let them go to the nearest police station. What they don't understand is that if you believe that this man is a man of God, and whatever he's saying is
It's
from
true.
God himself. It is true. You're not going to go to the police station. It's only your relatives who can see, hey, my
There's
sister there
something
is being
wrong there.
fooled.
Yeah.
Or my daughter there is being fooled, but my daughter is above 18 years. There's nothing I can do. I can't lay criminal charges. But the council would have been there to deal with him, which would have saved years of trauma of what these young women suffered.
To
Some
go
of them
through.
stayed there 5 years, 6 years. And that's all that we're saying, Portia.
And
This thing
understandably,
needs to
yes.
stop. We need to knock somewhere to stop some of the horrible things that are happening. Some of them are blatantly illegal. Others are not illegal. If you're telling me, old as I am, go resign there at the CRL and take your pension money, God said you must bring it to me.
All of
And I
it.
resign and I go to the bank and give you all my money.
Oh, Lord.
That's not illegal. You were not even there when I resigned. You were not there when I went to the bank. I came to you with my money. Now, who's going to the police station? That is unethical.
Very
You know,
unethical.
I'm old, I'm going to starve, but you still take my money.
All of it.
But if my
It's
family knows that, they report to the council calls you in and tells you, Mfundis, that's unethical, take back the money to Mkhwanazi. She's starving there at home.
it's so cruel. It's so cruel, Commissioner. Because of the time, which is rapidly,
I
let's
know
count.
we always run out of time.
Between me and you, it's always time that is against us. Because let's wrap it up, Commissioner. The relationship, because there needs to be a balance between the state and the religious sector. How is it looking like, especially in the fragile and the young democracy such as South Africa? Just in less than 2 minutes, Commissioner.
Less than 2 minutes, I would say.
Yes.
Our doors remain open
Mm.
so long as they are not sub judice matters.
Right.
People have asked me upfront, why are you not meeting with the church defenders? They've never asked for a meeting.
Okay.
Number two, they've taken us to court, and in their court papers, they've clearly stated that they don't want any mediation. So they've closed down that door of us asking other people to mediate between us. So these are not people who want peace. Other people like FOSA, for instance, Freedom of Religion South Africa, we've met with them. We explained fully to them what we're doing. Whether they believed us or they decided to go out and say something else is out of our control. So when people ask us for meetings, we're still meeting people even today.
Right.
So that door is opened, but it's shut for church defenders. They said they wanted to meet us in court. So there's nothing we can do to bring peace. And they mustn't pretend to people like they want to talk to us when their lawyers are telling us, we don't want to talk to you. So
No,
we're always willing to meet.
oh my. All right. Well, that's it for today between me and you,
Thank you.
Commissioner. I hope that we'll meet again. A very big thank you to you and your insights because these conversations are building our society. And I believe that there's a word of God in Hosea 4, I believe it's verse 6, that says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And it's important to uncover the conversation so that people can make informed decisions. That's what democracy also gives us as the people of the world, and especially in South Africa. So, sibonga kakhulu Mama Xaluva Ndonga,
Umonga
sibonga nje
mina
isikhathi sakho
sis.
kakhulu.
Yebo, siyabonga.
Siyabonga
Nisale
kakhulu.
kahle.
Nawe siyabonga ma'am. Bye. Hosea 4 verse 6 of NIV says, my people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priest. Because you've ignored the law of God, I also ignore children. A big thank you to our guest, Mrs. Thoko-Xaluva, Mkhwanazi-Xaluva, for sharing their insights with us today. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Until next time, let's keep talking African Echo. Goodbye.